Hi, everybody. I'm Harvey. I've been told I have a great face for radio, so hello, everybody. This is California Solartopia. All you folks out there in KPFK Pacific Land, we are at the gorgeous Santa Monica Civic Center looking at the mushroom chain reaction monument done by the great Paul Conrad, preserved by the city of Santa Monica. We are going to commemorate the 72nd anniversary of the tragic bombing of Nagasaki. And that's a traditional event, either August 6th, Hiroshima Day, August 9th, Nagasaki. It has been commemorated here for many, many years. In 1974, when I first started in the anti-nuclear movement, on August 9th, Richard Nixon resigned. We have a message commemoration of that, asking Donald Trump to do the same before he attacks North Korea, so that at least we'll have a planet to live on. The Nagasaki side of the event be culminated with a speech by Greg Palast, and then we'll have a group photo with the resign sign, and we'll tell Mr. Trump to please follow Mr. Nixon. And then from then on, we will have a rally talking about the current political situation in commemoration of that resignation. The great Mimi Kennedy is here, Lance is here, Kat Kramer, Blase Bonpane, and Jay. I'm wearing a somewhat soiled but very important T-shirt. This is the T-shirt commemorating the Golden Rule. The Golden Rule was a ship that attempted to sail into the nuclear test zone in the 1950s. It has a whole other story about it. It disappeared, it sank, it's been revived, and the Golden Rule will be docked in San Diego and in the LA Harbor over the coming winter. And I've been on it. It's a fabulous thing. So watch for notifications of the Golden Rule being available, that you can go out and sail on it, and it's just a fantastic piece of our peace network. So watch for it, and give the mic back to Jerry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Harvey, and thank you. A big round of applause for KPFK Radio. Let's continue to be supportive of the wonderful Pacifica Radio Network and the good work KPFK does. We're honored that Harvey Wasserman will be the special guest speaker at our monthly activist support circle on Monday, September 25th, here in Santa Monica, to the Unurban Coffee House at 6 p.m. It's an open support group for progressive activists, and you can go to the Activist Support Circle Facebook page, so mark it in your calendar. We hope you come out. And now, without any further ado, we'll start our Hiroshima and Nagasaki Remembrance. Reverend Janet McKeithen will do the convocation to start this very timely and solemn ceremony. Reverend McKeithen?
Let's take a moment. In this moment of silence, we think of all the victims of Nagasaki and Hiroshima. We think of all the victims of hate throughout this country and throughout our world. We recognize that hate pervades the human heart in some places. We recognize that there is evil, that evil does exist, that prejudice does exist, that hate does exist. But we also recognize that love exists, and justice exists, and courage exists, and change exists, and freedom exists. So we think this day about what we can do to bring about the change that we want to see. In this day that is so important in the lives of so many people, where we recognize those that have passed before us, we also look ahead to those that we are responsible for. Be with us. Be in our hands and our hearts and our feet. Be in our hearts. Help us never to have the hatred in our hearts that can cause this to happen ever, ever again.
I'm very honored to introduce our first very special guest speaker, one of the leaders of Physicians for Social Responsibility, the LA chapter. As many of you know, they shared the Nobel Peace Prize with the International Physicians Against Nuclear War many, many years ago, and their work has been ongoing and needed. Thank you so much, Denise Duffield, for all your ongoing dedication. Please welcome Denise Duffield. Both these mics, speaking to both of them.
Today, we mark 72 years since the last time a nuclear weapon was detonated over a populated city, instantly killing over 80,000 people, most of whom were civilians, women, children, and the elderly. We're here today, first and foremost, to remember the people of Nagasaki and of Hiroshima, Japan, where over 120,000 people perished, and to renew our commitment to eliminate nuclear weapons so that no one experiences such horror ever again. Nuclear weapons are unhealthy, unsustainable, unjust, and unnecessary. My organization, Physicians for Social Responsibility, was founded in 1961 upon the recognition that there is no meaningful medical response to nuclear war. Doctors and nurses would be among the dead and injured. Hospitals, communication systems, roads, and infrastructure would be destroyed. Fire and radiation would impede first responders. Our founders determined then that the best way to protect public health from nuclear war is to make sure it never begins in the first place. And therefore, they needed to step outside of their clinical roles, roll up their sleeves, and get involved in advocacy. So here we are, 5 decades later. We've gone from 70,000 nuclear weapons worldwide to 15,000. Of course, it only takes one to change life as we know it forever. We've been lucky enough also to somehow have avoided a nuclear war. But luck is not a security policy. Luck runs out. And today, not only do we have an impulsive and temperamental president, we also have an administration that is planning to spend over $1 trillion over the next 30 years to completely rebuild our nuclear arsenal. In effect, launching a new arms race. As they say, it's deja vu all over again. But this time, there's far fewer people who are aware of the nuclear threat. And at least in the United States, there's not much left of what was once a powerful anti-nuclear movement. Most Americans do not see or feel the nuclear threat today in the way that they do other issues such as climate change, health care, and an ugly, re-empowered bigotry that threatens the health and well-being of people of color, women, the LGBT community, religious minorities, especially Muslim Americans. So we have our work cut out for us. But we must work together on all fronts with all communities to build a new intersectional movement to eliminate nuclear weapons. And we do have some good news. Last month, on July 7th, the UN adopted a treaty to ban nuclear weapons. This is a truly historic achievement. Chemical weapons are banned, biological weapons are banned, cluster munitions are banned, landmines are banned. Up until last month, nuclear weapons were the only indiscriminate weapons of mass destruction that were not banned. What's going to happen now is on September 20th, the ban treaty is open for signatures. After 50 countries ratify the treaty, it will go into effect 90 days later, which means we could have a ban on nuclear weapons in effect by Christmas time, which would be fantastic. So now it is up to us to educate our communities and our elected officials on the dangers of nuclear weapons and begin the long road of building pressure for the U.S. to ratify that treaty. But there are several other important actions that you can take right now. Number one, ask Senator Kamala Harris to co-sponsor S-200, the Markey-Liu Restricting the First Use of Nuclear Weapons Act. Ask your Congress member, if he or she hasn't already, to co-sponsor the House version H.R. 669. This bill would require explicit congressional approval before the first use of any nuclear weapon in a conflict. Especially with President Fire and Fury in the White House, this bill is a critical preventative measure. You can also let your representatives know that you oppose the so-called modernization of our nuclear arsenal. Building new nuclear weapons will make us less, not more safe, and produce tons more dangerous radioactive waste, which remains toxic for up to 500,000 years and for which there is no proven safe long-term storage. More nuclear waste means more risk to workers, communities, and vital ecosystems throughout the United States, which are already threatened by the vast quantities of waste produced during the Cold War. And of course, this isn't one budget line item, so I urge you to please visit our website, psr-la.org, sign up for our email list, and we'll let you know as these items come up one by one as they do. And then finally, we have some events coming up on August 24th. PSR is partnering with the Interfaith Communities United for Justice and Peace. They will be having a luncheon on disarmament featuring our board president, Dr. Bob Dodge. And then we are also partnering with Global Zero and Code Pink to have an activist training that looks right now like it'll be September 7th. So again, we're here today marking the last time that a nuclear weapon was used in conflict. Let it be the last.
Is this the right one? Do you hear me? As an epidemiologist, I believe that an ounce of prevention is much better than tons of cure. And this is especially true for nuclear weapon because there is no cure. Our organization, International Health and Epidemiology Research Center, which have been established as a nonprofit in 1994, which I'm founder of, actually have been working tirelessly for the last 20 years to help nuclear weapons to be banned. When I visited Hiroshima, I visited Japan in 2002, I made sure to visit Hiroshima. That is when I shockingly realized that unspeakable horror, devastation people must have gone through. I also realized the unimaginable destruction possible by the use of nuclear weapons, not only immediately, but also after 6 to 7 decades. Nuclear weapons can destroy us all. It does not discriminate. It is crime against humanity. About 2 years ago, right here, I presented this poster. This poster says, let's make history. And nicely, it's only 2 years after we really made history. As you all know, on July 7, 2017, after 72 years, more than 120 countries signed and adopted the prohibition of nuclear weapon treaty. And this is really great historic step. Although to me is baby step, but a big giant baby step because it's going toward the right direction. Now we must pressure the nuclear weapon states who have boycotted the negotiation process. As we know, US and other 9 countries. We have to pressure them to come to the table and join in for doing the same thing and abolish all their nukes that they already have, which is more than 16,000, mostly in US and Russia. And also now we must urge the US to spend the $1.2 trillion that have put aside for modernizing the nuclear weapon. We won't have, I strongly believe, we won't have true peace in this world while the nuclear weapon exists, period. The momentum is here now. We all know the momentum is here, and let's not lose it. Thank you. Finally heard you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're very lucky to have Greg Palast with us. Greg is one of the world's leading investigative reporters, definitely an endangered species. Greg, Catherine Harris, the Secretary of State of Florida, called Greg twisted and maniacal. Greg has been called the most important investigative reporter of our time for his work at BBC and The Guardian. He's the author of the New York Times bestseller book, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, which is also a great movie. How many of you have seen Greg's movie? Okay, you all got to see his movie, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. Also, Billionaires and Ballot Bandits are in Madhouse. He's reporting for Rolling Stone now. And began his career. He's kind of the Bruce Springsteen of investigative reporters, I think. Began his career as a Justice Department investigator for racketeering and fraud, and has done a lot of really great work on the nuclear issue. And I do want to say, by the way, we do have a no nukes movement, and this past week we had a spectacular victory where we shut 2 reactors under construction in South Carolina, $8 billion. Which leaves us just 2 under construction. And Greg is a very significant player in that. He did a lot of the important investigative RICO reporting on what's been going on in New York State. And thankfully, we have him here now in California. Come on down, Greg Palast. Thank you very much for being here. And no nukes.
Thank you, Harvey. It was very important that we had that moment of silence for the victims of the atomic attack. But what we need now is a moment of real serious noise. And that's what I intend to load your voice bullets with right now. Let's arm. Thank you very much, Harvey, Reverend, and the organizations here today. As I was listening, I realized, is there anything worse than nuclear war? Is there anything worse than dropping an atomic bomb? Let's think about what that is. Remember, an atomic bomb, the reason why this is a special meeting, we didn't have a discussion here about dropping bombs on Tokyo or Hanoi. That's tragic too, but there's something special about a nuclear bomb because it's not a weapon of war. It's a weapon of murder. When you drop a bomb, you know that it is not going to be killing soldiers. It's not going to be killing your enemy combatants. It will be deliberately incinerating children, women, old people, people who are on your side. Parents get to watch their children's eyes melt out of their skulls. Some of their children just turn into shadows on a wall. They burn from the inside out, and a year later they're dying painfully, still burning. People in Nagasaki are dying 72 years later. The few that have made it, they're dying of it now. So we are not protesting a weapon of war. We are protesting a weapon of murder. And murder will come back to us. Murder haunts, and murder also kills. Let me remind you today, the day after Fire and Fury. We talk correctly that North Korea has an insane, murderous madman at its helm. Did he arrive from outer space? No. I'll tell you how he arrived. 80,000 people were incinerated, burnt to death. Kids, men, women, everyone. 80,000 people in Nagasaki. That ain't nothing compared to the firestorm bombings of North Korea. B-52 napalm bombings that made Dresden look like a cookout. Hundreds of thousands of North Koreans, men, women, and children, burnt to death or their lungs sucked out in napalm firestorms in a series of Dresdens dropped on North Korea under the direction of Mad Dog Curtis LeMay, who did say, to his credit, we better win this goddamn war, because if not, we're going to be in Nuremberg as war criminals. So there was something worse than the nuclear bomb at Nagasaki. And now it's coming home to Guam, to Honolulu, to Los Angeles. If you're wondering why the people of North Korea are scared to death of us and think we are crazy killers, it's because we were crazy killers. We have to remember what happens when you kill people's children. They might remember it. That's what happened. That was our war. It was worse than a nuclear attack. Of course, General MacArthur did suggest using nuclear weapons, just as Nixon suggested to Henry Kissinger in the White House tapes to use nuclear weapons on North Vietnam. He said, think big, Henry, think big. And Henry Kissinger said, that would be a little too much, Mr. President. This is true. This is from the tapes. He said, you would go down as the greatest mass murderer in history. Kissinger was concerned about history, not about the killing. What made the bombs dropping on Hiroshima and Nagasaki different than anything that went before is because until before, and you can give me all the counter examples in hypocrisy, but America was proud of one rule of war that we kept. You don't murder civilians. You do not deliberately murder civilians. We are not the Nazis. We are not the Japanese who murdered civilians in Manchuria and Nanking and throughout China. Mass murderers. By the way, more Japanese war criminals were executed than German war criminals. I don't cry for them. But we prided ourselves that we don't do that. And then we did it. 72 years ago Sunday, 72 years ago today. I don't understand. Maybe there was a reason for Hiroshima. Hard to explain, but once they saw that, how could you possibly drop that bomb on Nagasaki? That's why I'm very glad we're having this special memorial today. This comes back. Fire and fury today is the result of the fire and fury unleashed on North Korea more than half a century ago. When does it stop? How about right now? Now. The end so we don't ever use it, we don't threaten it, because that's not American. It's not. What we have here, I know many of you will look around saying, hey, it looks like someone couldn't get into a Grateful Dead concert. But in fact, this is a meeting of patriots who are reminding America what America is. I've been asked to touch on one other thing that's not completely unrelated. Nuclear power, fire and flames and fury, so we can turn on our microwaves. Before I was a reporter, an investigative reporter, I had a real job. I was an investigator for the Justice Department and other agencies, and after a several-year investigation, brought a massive racketeering case against the nuclear plant builders of America, particularly involved in the Shoreham nuclear plant. And we won a jury verdict of $4.3 billion and closed a couple nukes, etc. But they're back. I want to just tell you, give you one thing I found in my investigation, which is, by the way, the investigation and many other of my investigations covered in my book, Vulture's Picnic. I want you to see this dark piece of paper. Since you can't read it, I'll leave it because I don't want to be like Joe McCarthy and say, I have document here. And then it's just, his laundry list. I really do have the documents. It was a notebook by an engineer at the nuclear plant, with the nuclear plant construction company, now called Shaw, which built the reactors at Shoreham here in California and at a place called Fukushima. And it says here, it's about one engineer talking to another. He's talking to a guy named Wiesel, an engineer. He said Wiesel was very upset. This is from the engineer's notebook, which I put in front of the jury. He seemed very nervous, very agitated. In fact, the plant was riddled with problems that no way on earth could stand an earthquake. The team of engineers sent into inspect found the most of these components would completely and utterly fail during an earthquake. I presented this information to a jury in 1988 that these plants, that was called a seismic qualification, their ability to withstand an earthquake, San Onofre, Diablo Canyon, Fukushima, could not withstand an earthquake, that they were supposedly meant to withstand, that the reports were fake. This engineer was told by his bosses, you change your report to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, you change the words, or your job is toast. Doesn't matter if your neighbors are toast. Your job is toast. The report was faked and changed. The report was faked and changed. A jury found the builder liable. They went bankrupt. It was called Stone & Webster, and now remember, corporations are not people. They're not people. I've never heard of a corporation losing its legs in Iraq. And corporations don't die. They're shapeshifters. See, we thought we'd killed this corporation, Stone & Webster, but it came back as another company called Shaw. And by the way, they've got the contract to rebuild Fukushima. Here in California, we have the remnants of a nuclear tragedy that, thank God, didn't happen. We thought that nuclear power was dead, but out of the crypt it came. Who took it out of who opened the crypt? Who electrified this corpse? Well, a guy named Obama, who, when he ran for president, made fun of John McCain for trying to revive nuclear power. What happened? A guy named Rahm Emanuel, the biggest nuclear power corporation in America, was created by an investment banker called Rahm Emanuel. That's where he made his millions recreating the nuclear industry. And so when he became chief of staff, you ready? How did these nuclear plants get built that are now being shut down in South Carolina? Now being shut down in Georgia? Why were they even being built? The answer is because, and here's where the war and nuclear come together too, in the emergency appropriation for armor for Humvees and personal armor for our soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan. Remember, no one's going to vote against it. Whether you're for or against the wars, you don't vote against the armor. One of the last line items was a $58 million line item that was supposedly for energy savings for the military. If you went through the documents, what you found out is that it was a $58 billion guarantee to the nuclear industry. That's what was in the emergency appropriation hidden in the bill for armor for our soldiers, a $58 billion guarantee. And by the way, we're now going to pay off 4 nuclear plants were built with this guarantee. They're all being shut down before they've produced a kilowatt of electricity. I mean, thank God that's safer, but because they can't withstand earthquakes, they can't withstand the big bad wolf huffing and puffing. We're now going to pay about $16 billion in payoffs on those guarantees. Thank you, Mr. Obama. Thank you, Mr. Rahm. Those are the progressives. And now we have Mr. Fire and Fury. Okay, what I'm concerned with is a journalist only, and I'll leave you with this. First of all, by the way, very interesting experiment. Don't worry, we're not going into North Korea. We're not going to invade. We're not going to drop bombs on them. You know why? Because they've got a bomb, which, by the way, is now the very proof that Saddam didn't have a bomb. Because if he did, we would have never gone in. There was no weapons of mass destruction. They knew it. That's why we invaded. If they knew that he had them, it'd be like North Korea. We'd be talking. How did Fire and Fury become our president and the man making these decisions? I want you to remember that 15 years ago, the Donald said we should preemptively strike North Korea to eliminate its nuclear weapons program. He said that on Meet the Press. Now think about that. Meet the Press, our big shot journalism show. They had a bankrupt casino magnate who can't keep his little vulgarian fingers out of ladies' underpants, and they're asking him what we should do with North Korea. And then they wonder how he became president. It's the media has given us this monstrosity because they opened the curtains and started the show. And then they found out that they couldn't close the curtain fast enough. The show continues. I don't know if we can withstand the finale, because I'm going to tell you this. This commemoration of Nagasaki will also be the commemoration for the next nuclear war. We have to have it now because we won't be able to have it after. Thank you very much.
Big round of applause for Greg Palast. A moment of silence, please, for the victims of Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
So what we're going to do is we have a 7-letter message to send to Donald Trump in recognition of what Richard Nixon did in 1974, which is resign. RESIGN. This is a personal message. Anybody who wants to be in the picture? All right, ready? Donald Trump, what do we want you to do now? Sign! All right, all those who don't have a sign, put your hands up like Nixon. Remember Nixon did this? Pretend you're on the helicopter going to San Clemente. I am not a crook. Repeat after me. I am not a crook. Now we have Mimi Kennedy. I can't even begin to describe what a great activist and human being she is. She's been the star of innumerable motion pictures. She's currently in the series Mom, and she is one, for God's sakes. Come on down. Yeah. Mimi Kennedy, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I want to say this. First of all, Nagasaki and Hiroshima, we murdered people and they were blindsided. They were taken out of this life without the least bit of warning. And I think that is one of the most fearful things about nuclear weapons. We all know that death is part of life. It is what happens to the human body at a certain point. None of us escape it. But a mass murder so sudden that no one is prepared to say goodbye, to see their loved ones for the last time, it is horrifying. It is terrifying. And what has happened is that as the country that did that twice, to over 250,000 people, took them out, blindsided them, took them from this life with no preparation. We owe the planet an amends. And what is true about nuclear power is it is so much greater than the human body can understand. We can't possibly make an amends for nuclear destruction on this planet. The half-life is 50,000 years. You heard 500,000 years, 500,000 years. We ought not to have these weapons, so we must unilaterally begin to disarm. We're the first country who used them. We got to do that. The Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, South Africa got rid of its nuclear weapons. Interestingly, for a bad reason. The white regime didn't want a black regime to ever have nuclear weapons. So it was racism. Yet they got rid of them. I say take heart from that, and that out of evil might come some good. But what we need is time. And time is what the madman in the White House, the impaired mind in the White House, and perhaps the impaired mind, it certainly seems so, of the man in North Korea, they seem to not, they're as impatient as 2-year-olds on the playground. They want to destroy the other guy's thing that he built up. And it's called saber rattling, right? This fire and fury. I trust you might have heard by now that quote is a directly similar quote to what Harry Truman said after Hiroshima and before Nagasaki. He called it, "We will rain ruin from the skies like has never been seen before on this earth." That was the exact same image, and Donald Trump used it. And he wants to do it while he's still president, and he may be running out of time. And what we need to do is use our time to be at things like this, to be doing all the activism that we can, to empower and embolden the adults in the room, whatever is left in Congress, to slow down this executive's agenda. We have been trying, I know all of you have, and I only want to embolden you further in that as the only action we can take. Beyond action, there is the fact that the dead are on our side. Never forget that. In my religious training, there was something called the communion of saints. And those living on earth as humans now had communion with others who had died before. Time doesn't exist in that realm, so it doesn't matter when they died. So we have the dead of Nagasaki and the dead of Hiroshima and the broken hearts since then of cancer, of radiation cancer, of environmental pollution cancer. We have a friend right now, Judy Hess in PDA, and she's going to have a procedure tomorrow because she's worried about something that was probably brought to her by radiation or pollution. I get angry at that, but Judy has used her time and will continue to do so. We have the dead with us. We have many good people who are living with us. We have whatever and wherever we come from to be human beings on this earth. I am sure they are with us. So let us use our time. Don't be frightened by this madman or the other madman or the press that loves to tell you all the leaders are madmen and we should be terrified. We have agency. We're human beings on this planet. We're going to preserve it. And thank you all for being here. God bless the dead. And I say God bless us. I'm getting near that horrible political thing of God bless a country, and I don't mean to. So let us just say together in communion with all the other souls and spirits that have loved this planet, let's use our time and get enough time that this madman will just be a bad memory. Thank you.
Thank you. You're wonderful. Yeah. Always. Yeah. Thank you so much, Mimi. We have Blase Bonpane coming up, Peter Matthews, Lance will talk, Kat Kramer, but we're visited very quickly by Jay Ponte, who worked for a candidate who would never have talked about dropping a nuclear weapon anywhere, Bernie Sanders. Jay, will you just come say a couple words and tell us?
Thanks, Harvey. Thanks, everybody. And I did not work specifically for the congressman, but I think as many of you did, I worked every waking moment to create that reality. And it was quite a profound... Who else supported Bernie Sanders? Yeah. And I can say it's safe to say we wouldn't be in this situation if that were the case. So I just wanted to quickly read this quote, which is a stark reminder as we stand behind the chain reaction, the costs that are at stake here as we see the escalation happening on the world stage. They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen. Threatening beyond the normal state, they will be met with fire and fury and the power, the likes of which the world has never seen. Now I'm going to read another quote. I can't believe that this world can go beyond our generation and down succeeding generations with this kind of weapon on both sides poised, with someday some fool or some maniac accidentally triggering the kind of war that is the end of the line for us. And I think what a sigh of relief it would be for everyone on this earth that someday we start to go down the road of reduction. Maybe that one day somebody will say, why not go all the way? Let's rid of these things. And that was Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan. So to those of you who are conservatives, he was the paragon of the conservative ideal, and he was one of the greatest proponents of nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament. And today, I call upon all of us, because right now this is not just about the Republicans versus the Democrats, and I would encourage us to think about this is the 99% versus the 1%. And we can see it on both sides. We can see it in the corporate media. The only time Donald Trump has been praised is when he launches weapons of war. We saw Brian Williams saying those beautiful bombs being sailed in Syria. Believe me, when I was at the Democratic Platform Committee, the rhetoric against Iran was quite sharp as well. So we have to realize this is not about partisan politics. This is about everyday Americans coming together, the intersection of all movements, the intersection of labor movements, the intersection of climate justice, the intersection of Black Lives Matter, the intersection of indigenous rights, the intersection of all of these movements coming together, standing united. They will not stand for this type of rhetoric because we are the ones, the normal people of North Korea, of South Korea. And by the way, on the world stage, this type of rhetoric is absolutely undermining our credibility, undermining the relationships we have with South Korea, with Japan. And how is it that we can flourish? How is it that we can make America great again, truly, if we are absolutely undermining all of our allies? No one will want to work with us. And so I challenge you, Mr. President, if you are to make America great again, be a leader. Be a leader in this time. Leaders unite. Leaders inspire. Leaders are authentic. They have integrity. They invite people to rise above what they think they can do. They do not push people based on fear and demagoguery. And so, if you're not prepared to do that, we're also going to celebrate the day when Richard Nixon resigned, which I'm sure was a great sigh of relief to those of us, to those who are alive at the time. Because right now, as Harvey said, this planet cannot sustain it. We are fighting for the survival of the human race. Climate change is real. The dereliction of leadership right now is absolutely putting the species of the planet in jeopardy, leaving the Paris Climate Accord, the way we've been humiliated at the G20 summit. The time for bold leadership is now, and if the president is not prepared to step up and be that bold leader, to unite and inspire, we call for him to resign. And if he is not going to do it, then guess who it's up to? It is up to us to unite and form the opposition that cannot be dismantled. And it is your heart and your minds coming together, believing in change, and we will overcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Harvey.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you for coming, brother. Good. All right. So we're now going to have one of the great activists of our time, and then followed by Tom English, who's going to give us, thank God, a little levity here. But first we're going to do Blase Bonpane. Blase is one of the greatest peace advocates we've known in our lifetime. We're honored by his presence and by his partner. And I'm going to scooch this over to you, Blase.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. And I want to thank all of you for being here this evening and being part of the great awakening that's taking place in this country. And it's really impressive to see everywhere, not just in Santa Monica, but throughout the entire country. We know we have a long history of efforts at peace. Dr. King told us in April 4th, 1967, that we are the greatest purveyor of violence on earth today, and we've gotten worse. We have continued with wars in the Middle East, and wars that are apparently perpetual because there's a lot of money in it, and that's the tragic part. So we want to look at what has taken place today. First, we'll look at the Code of Military Justice. The Code of Military Justice makes it very clear that you may not follow an illegal order. And if you follow an illegal order, you are committing a crime. And it goes further. It gives examples of illegal orders, saying an illegal order would be to fire on the shipwrecked, or to receive an order from an officer to kill non-combatants by assassination. Both are against the military code of justice. If you obey those laws, you are breaking the rules. Now, in both logic and law, there is a theme known as a fortiori. That means for a greater reason. If it is illegal to open fire on the shipwrecked, a fortiori, it is illegal to kill 6 or 8 million people at one time, most of whom are non-combatants. So the very thought of it is illegal. To follow it is illegal. To carry it out is illegal. We had the Holocaust of the Third Reich. They had their statement, never again. It was a pleasure to be sent to Hiroshima by the Physicians for Social Responsibility, and we heard the same theme, that never again. We heard in both Hiroshima, and we heard it coming from Nagasaki as well. What we're driving at here is the absolute need for civil disobedience. The Vietnam War ended in one of the greatest mutinies in history, and we're saying we will not obey these orders. Now, we as civilians do not have the commander-in-chief as our commander-in-chief. He is only commander-in-chief of the military. But both military and civilians must understand that we will not obey these orders. Anyone in any silo, anyone, any officer that takes that order in any one of these courts here, ask them, is a threat a crime? They will respond to you, a threat is a crime. You are not allowed to threaten 6 million people. You're committing a crime. So we ask you to get the hell out of office tonight.
Yeah!
Follow Blessed Richard Nixon. We don't want you there. Go away. Thank you for coming tonight.
Fantastic. Blase Bonpane, no one else could do that. Thank you so much, Blase. Fantastic.
Thank you very much, Blase. I want to personally thank Blase Bonpane because 34 years ago he married me and my beautiful wife, Marissa. Our wedding was a peace rally right down the street here. So thank you so very much, Blase. I also want to acknowledge we're very honored to have another former mayor of Santa Monica, great activist in every single way. Please acknowledge Mike Feinstein. And how do the solar power lights look here on Chain Reaction? Okay?
Yeah, beautiful.
Good.
All right.
Want to thank the city. And also a speaker that just had a beautiful, well-written article in the Huffington Post today. A 40-year political activist in every way, one of the best in the country. Please welcome Lance Simmons.
Thanks, Jerry.
And then you take over.
Okay, everyone. A great man once said that brevity is the soul of wit, so I am going to try to be as brief as I possibly can. We have an insane president. All right, I think we all acknowledge that. I would like the world to know our president is insane, certifiably, no doubt, and he needs to go, and he needs to go rather quickly. And before he goes, we have to deliver. If I were to deliver one message to the Orange Julius, it would be this. A little less of fire and fury, and a little less of make my day. All right? Because the stakes are too high right now. We all realize that. And this commemoration here today just brings it home to its barest essentials. The stakes are too high. So we got to do everything we can. Get him out of office. I wrote a piece in the Huffington Post today. I hope you take a look at it. You know, I always struggle with what I'm going to entitle these things. And this is an old enough crowd, one, to remember the resignation of Richard Nixon, with all due respect to our millennial friend who was just up here. But also to remember this. This is going to be an audience participation thing, because all of you will remember this song, because this is what I entitled my piece today. War. Huh. What is it good for?
Absolutely nothing.
Say it again now. War. Huh. What is it good for?
Absolutely nothing.
Thank you.
Hey, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. We got two speakers to come. We want to make sure that everybody understands my shirt, Solartopia, indicates a transition to totally renewable energy. The entire world, starting with Los Angeles, is going to be completely solarized, or we're not going to make it on this planet, and I think we will. And one of the things we have to do is this. I wore this shirt in 1984 when I was arrested in San Luis Obispo at the Diablo Canyon nuclear plant, which is still operating. There's a deal to shut it down, but not soon enough. We need Diablo Canyon shut tomorrow as part of our Solartopia campaign to get this planet totally renewable. So let's remember that. I want to invite up here Kat Kramer. Kat's father, Stanley, made the magnificent movie On the Beach, the first really important movie about nuclear war. She runs a wonderful film series. She's a great activist. Kat, what do you got to say for us today?
Thank you, Harvey. I'm actually losing my voice, so I'm going to be very brief, like the beginnings of laryngitis. But thank you all so much for coming out here tonight. And I have to say that Harvey Wasserman, let's give him a round of applause again for putting this together, and everybody else that spoke and helped. Harvey was actually the guest panelist, one of them along with Mimi Kennedy and many others, when I presented the Atomic Age Cinema Fest last year at Raleigh Studios, all the films about nuclear issues from The Man Who Saved the World. There were many of them. And yes, my father made On the Beach. And I have a cinema series that Harvey mentioned where I only present socially conscious films. I presented Fallout, a documentary featuring my mom and the great Dr. Helen Caldecott. I'm sure you all know who she is. And Fallout was about the making of On the Beach, which was based on Neville Shute's book. But before I go into any more, because I'm going to actually wrap it up because of my voice, I think we should have another major screening or community event, even with my series, or my series would support it, and screen On the Beach, because that film right now really needs to be seen more than ever, since it was made in 1959, before my time, but unfortunately it's more relevant now. So I hope all of you will come, but I am going to be putting something together with Harvey with that particular film. And, you know, it's so important that generations coming up see it and everybody see it right now.
So thank you very much. Thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Kat Kramer. If any of you want to be on my Solartopia list, write me at solartopia@gmail. You'll get all my stuff about converting Los Angeles and the world to renewable energy. Jerry wanted to say a word about the peace symbol here.
Thanks again, everyone. You'll all notice at the front of Chain Reaction, there's 72 candles, since this is the 72nd anniversary of the tragic atomic bombing of Nagasaki, in the shape of a peace symbol. But I'd say 98% of the people in America and around the world don't know how the peace symbol began. The familiar peace symbol, no, it's not a Mercedes-Benz symbol, started in 1958. It was introduced by the late philosopher Bertrand Russell. He commissioned an artist named Gerald Holtham to draw up a symbol for their famous and historic Aldermaston marches against nuclear weapons. And the artists related it to what they call the International Semaphore Alphabet. It's a coded alphabet. You see it on ships in the ocean where someone's standing, pointing flags in different directions to indicate different letters of the alphabet. So according to Semaphore, two flags held at a 45-degree angle to the side stands for the letter N for nuclear. Two flags, one held straight up and one held straight down, stands for the letter D for disarmament. N, nuclear, D, disarmament, and naturally the circle stands for total world or worldwide. That symbol started as a symbol for total nuclear disarmament, and we need to remember that in our ongoing efforts to promote peace. How could we ever have peace until we get rid of the nuclear weapons from the face of Mother Earth? Thank you very, very much.
Very good. Very beautiful. Thank you, Jerry. We have two more pieces of this program. We're actually almost exactly on schedule. I know that's unheard of. This couldn't possibly be the left, but nonetheless, it's my honor to introduce, and then Tom English has a wonderful little sketch to send us on our way. So Peter Matthews will be our final speaker, unless Jody showed up. No, Jody? Okay, so Peter is a professor of sociology and other things at Cypress College and Long Beach State, is that right? And come on up. You've written a number of really great books on democracy. Tell us what we need to know about removing the current president with an asterisk. By the way, it's never a president with Donald Trump. There's always an asterisk because he was not elected president of the United States. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Harvey. And sisters and brothers, warriors in the struggle for social justice, to end nuclear power and nuclear weapons. Are you with us? I know you are. The scriptures say that where there is no vision, the people perish. You heard that before. Where there's no vision, the people perish. And we cannot lose the vision that Dr. King had, that Harriet Tubman had, the progressives our country had for a country of social justice and peace. And we are about to lose it right now because we have a man in the White House who has said that he will use the most extreme power of fire and fury to stamp out a nation that has never attacked us. If we look back at the agreed framework that Bill Clinton helped to negotiate and had in place for over 8 years with North Korea, from 1994 till 2002, until George Bush came in and basically disbanded it for many reasons. We were on the road to peace and justice there, and to accommodation and tolerance with a system that's opposite to ours. That's what this country is about. That's what America should be about. And in many ways, my parents were immigrants to this country, and we lived the American dream. But right now, our American dream is being stolen and taken away by the military-industrial complex because all this money is going into weapons and nuclear weapons and now missile defensive systems that we don't even need because we should disarm and abide by the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty of 1970, which Article 6, as you know, Article 6 calls for complete disarmament of all the countries that have nuclear weapons. They have to put themselves on a road toward it with a real plan, a concrete plan, and not just ask the other countries that don't have it to not get them. Am I right about that? Article 6, look it up. Article 6 of the NPT actually requires a world completely free of nuclear weapons. So let's follow the international agreements, that international law, if we are a law-abiding nation. I love America with all my heart, but it's time to reclaim the American dream because we have lost our way. And let me say one more thing the scripture says. What does it profit a man if he should gain the whole world but lose his own soul? Have you heard that before? I ask, what should it profit a nation if she should gain the whole world and lose her own soul? Let's not let America do that, please. Let's get back and capture our soul and go forward with international harmony and peace and social justice and soft power, not hard power. Thank you so much, and God bless you all. And God bless the world, not just America, America included. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to conclude the spoken part by pointing out there is at least one other rally going on simultaneously with this one, calling for commemorating Nagasaki and calling for Nixon to resign. It's at the Lawrence Livermore Laboratory in the East Bay, and a man speaking there is named Daniel Ellsberg. And Daniel Ellsberg, of course, did the Pentagon Papers, but I read somewhere, and I had lunch with Dan, he's a wonderful guy, specifically to ask him one question. Daniel Ellsberg was a very high-ranking Pentagon war criminal in a way. He was for the Vietnam War. This is the Rand Institute where he worked, and he consulted with Richard Nixon personally many times in the Oval Office. And I asked Dan Ellsberg if there was truth in a certain rumor. And the rumor was that Richard Nixon said very explicitly that had it not been for the movement against the war in Vietnam, he would have used nuclear weapons in Vietnam. And I asked Dan, did Richard Nixon say that to you? And by God, Daniel Ellsberg looked me dead in the eye, and Dan's a perfectly honest and honorable guy. And he said, Richard Nixon said to me, had it not been for the anti-war movement, I would use nuclear weapons in Vietnam. So if you ever doubt the power and importance of grassroots activism, you know, we have to repeat this now. I never thought there'd be anybody in the White House crazier than Richard Nixon. But that's what we're looking at. And this, we are the last stop to prevent a nuclear war, wherever it may be, with a madman in the White House. We've got to do it again. But never doubt the power of activism. I can't imagine what this world will be like. God help us if nuclear weapons are used again. We have to prevent it. This is the memorial, and you are here. We are all here to do what we did during the movement against the war in Vietnam. We prevented a madman from using nuclear weapons then, and we have to do it again now. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming out. We have a wonderful treat. The one and only Tom English is going to move us out of here. What part of...
Well, I'll just start it. What part of Fukushima do you not understand? When nuclear contamination hits the fan, plutonium is everywhere. It's in the sea, it's in the air, and we don't even talk about evacuation plan. What part of Fukushima do you not understand? What part of Fukushima did you somehow miss? When sure is shooting every time with things like this. Destruction rages like a flame. Officials play and spin the blame, and all of us are racing, facing the abyss. What part of Fukushima did you somehow miss? Humankind is humankind, and we all make mistakes. Hard sometimes to not be blind and fall for fakes. But even now, before our eyes, it's in the sea, it's in the skies. You know we best prioritize air, water, get wise. What part of Fukushima do you need clarified? What happens when the plate tectonics slip and slide? Diablo blows, what happens then? It isn't if, you know it's when. And everybody petrified, nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. What part of Fukushima do you not understand? How then can even FEMA ever lend a hand. The time to make the break is now, to wind and wave and solar power. If we're gonna live, nuclear power must be banned. Wrap your mind round Fukushima. It's no time to be a dreamer. We got to be our own redeemer. Google Fukushima, take a stand.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. Write me at solartopia@gmail.com, and let's make sure that we stop all nuclear war.
One thing, I'm doing a fundraiser for to get electronic voting machines out of our system to completely, So that's happening at the Church in Ocean Park on First and Hill on Sunday the 20th at 12:30 in the afternoon. Please come. It's really going to be great.
Thank you, everybody. No nukes, and we'll see you in Solartopia.